appreciate that. I'm always so back and forth about my own work. I mean, as any artist is, it's always like, oh, I hate it. No, I love it. No, I hate it. Kind of thing. Or like, I'll be taking the photos and be like, I love it. And then I'm editing them. I'm like, I don't know what to do with them. Like, I find that I take so long to post any of my photography because I go back and forth so often.
Welcome to Attitude of Altitude podcast, presented by Planet of One. We're sharing stories and conversations, encouraging and empowering listeners to be bold, take action, and be your best self, so we may be the change we desire to see in this world. Know that your attitude determines your altitude in life. Welcome to the podcast. Well, hello, Sabrina, and welcome. How are you, my dear?
Hi, I'm doing so great. Thank you for having me. You look wonderful.
Thank you. So do you. As soon as you came, I was like, wow, she looks amazing.
Thank you. We both look pretty good today.
And I'm going to say you look amazing because for the audience that's watching or listening, you went through a procedure very recently.
Yes.
That is very important, especially as a young woman. And I'm going to launch right there.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about what you just went through?
Yeah. So on Wednesday, which I don't even know what day it is today, I guess it's been almost a week, but I had a surgery where they removed 2 benign tumors from my left breast. I've had them since I was about 15. So they've been in me for quite a few years, at least 5 years. And I've just been getting it checked up every 6 months and stuff. But they finally have like grown to a size where they're like, okay, it's probably just safer to take it out. Like, they gave me the decision. They gave me 3 different choices. And I was like, I just kind of I've had it for so long. I don't want to have to think about it.
It's the culture background of your mom versus your dad. Your dad is American and
Yes.
Your mom is Taiwanese, Chinese.
Yes.
So that
my dad grew up in the suburbs of Ohio. Like it was very different for him in the 50s. Like, yeah.
How has that impacted who you are, being of 2 different cultures? Because I spoke to a mutual person, Yasmin, who's my niece, and I talk about me moving from Lebanon to the States and the culture shock that came with it. Which obviously it's normal. Yet you are on this side where you're in the States, you're born in the States, but because of the opportunity, is how I look at them, of having 2 different cultures blending. What was that like for you? And what is it like for you even till today?
Yeah, that's something I have seriously struggled with off and on through my entire life. I don't know, being mixed, I feel like, because it's not necessarily like, it's not like such a bad experience that it's something that everyone wants to talk about and share or anything. It's not a bad experience at all. I love it. It's just very particular in the way it makes you think and act towards your literal own family. Like, I'm an only child. So like, there's literally no one in my family that looks or acts or has remotely the same upbringing as I do. I'm just super lucky that I grew up in a really ethnic neighborhood, and I was able to, weirdly enough, I was the white kid of the school, which was really interesting because like, so for so long, my identity was like, oh, I'm white. And then I'm like, no, I'm Chinese. I'm white, Chinese. It's back and forth. And I never really felt like I was both. And I'm kind of back in that Chinese era right now. But growing up, I don't think I knew any different again. I just knew something was just kind of weird and I didn't know why. Just things like, I was the only Asian kid at my school my entire life, except Saturdays I went to Chinese school, which was a whole different experience. So during the weekdays, I would be the Asian kid. I would come with like my, like, they were like Chinese lunches, and they were in like these like cute little containers that is very popular in Asia. And it's not like something that you would think twice about, but like I would show up with it and like kids would comment on it, like not like in a negative way or anything. Again, it wasn't negative, but I just felt so out of place. And I wanted to be like the cool kids who like got in the lunch line with them and got whatever pizza they had for the day kind of thing. And it was just like little things like that. So I would like hide my lunches and stuff, it's just like little things like that. And then on the weekends, then I'm the white kid because I'm now at a Chinese school and people like didn't even know I was even part Asian. I remember one time my mom walked in and they were like, "You're adopted?" I was like, "No, that's my mom." And they also like kind of, again, didn't mean to, but excluded me from recess or whatever because I wasn't one of theirs, kind of thing. And that's just from peers, and that's just from people like classmates and stuff. That's not even like my own family, kind of a thing. Which I could also go about into if you wanted.
Go into it, whatever you like, because I
Okay,
think
yeah,
this is
yeah.
so crucial for a lot of the younger generation that is struggling with something that they think that it only applies to them, and they feel
Yeah.
isolated or they feel like they don't belong. You going through this and continuing to move forward, because we're going to get to your career and all the wonderful things you
Mhm.
get to be a part of, for them to see that everything is wonderful, everything is a step forward in
Mhm.
becoming who you are. So share whatever you like, Sabrina.
Yeah, yeah. Well, me and Yasmin have this talk all the time. Like it's something that we're both very passionate about. Something that she's heard me say this literally 100 times. But how I like to put it is being mixed isn't being half something else. It's you're both of those things. And I think that's something that people don't see a lot. And to be fair, every mixed kid is different. Yasmin and I are just lucky that we grew up with the culture of our ethnic sides and stuff and very heavily involved in it and stuff. I know not everyone's like that, which is also very valid. But it's also even things like I had a friend for a bit. She was I'm not sure what kind of Asian she was, because she didn't know herself because she was adopted. And she has two white parents, but she just knows that she's some kind of Asian, but wasn't grown up with any of the culture, any of that, and stuff like that. She doesn't know anything of that sort. And specifically with the industry could easily be like, that person is much more deserving to be called Asian than I would be, which understandable, she is, but whereas like I like speak the language and have grown up with traditions and cultures and stuff like that, it just kind of hurts that I would easily be cast aside to someone who is also very much deserving of the title, but has less of the stuff that comes with it. I
Mm.
guess I don't know. It's a fickle line. I feel like I'm not expressing that part very in the way I want to, but it's just things like that. Oh, I was going to my family. That's what it was. Yeah. So my family on my mom's side still all lives in Taiwan. So I haven't had too much contact with them because I did struggle with the language so much growing up. And then my dad's family still lives in Ohio. And I remember like I would go visit in the summer and something, and my aunts would take me to get my nails done or something. And there were Cantonese workers doing the nails, and they were talking in Cantonese, and my aunt leaned over to me and she was like, "Can you understand what they're saying? I feel like they're always like talking trash about us." And I was like, "Oh, no, Cantonese is different than Chinese, or Mandarin, like I don't understand a word of Cantonese, and also more than likely, even if they are talking about you, it doesn't really matter." But just things like that from my dad's side. And then we have a lot of Chinese family friends here as well. And I remember one time that I was at a wedding, and there was an older lady sitting next to me. I actually don't know who she was, but she was just like a family member of someone there. And my friend was next to me who is fully Chinese as well. The older lady would like talk across me to her and in Chinese and being like, "Does this white girl even know how to use chopsticks?" Oh, you broke up. Yeah. And then I would just be like, I responded in Chinese being like, "Yeah, no, I know how to use chopsticks." It's just like things like that. Again, it's not anything that's like super damaging or harmful as like it can be with a lot of other races and race experiences or experiences linked with race. It's not like it's this horrible thing, but it definitely still like contributes to like having like an identity crisis.
I am talking about this topic so much, honestly, because of that specific issue, to get rid of some of the identity crisis. Because
Yeah.
wouldn't the world be a boring place if everyone was the same? To
Yeah.
actually begin to appreciate the variety of cultures and the
Hmm.
different nuances that come with growing up in a multicultural, or being able to understand someone else's culture.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So
Yeah.
opening that up, that's why the conversation, so that younger kids or even women that are your age that still struggle with it, to go, wait a minute, that's what makes me unique. That's what makes me so different from someone else, that I have something to share.
Yeah. And you know what? And also because like I feel like especially like nowadays, there's so much more acceptance in culture and stuff and different cultures and stuff like that, that I feel like it is like the rate of mixed kids is going to go up, you know, like crazy, you know, to the point where we're just like confused, you know.
Eh,
But so I think it's great talking about it.
And I'd love to see it
Yeah.
get to a point where we don't actually look at anyone as if they're mixed or this or that, but to just see them as who they are. That, oh my God, this person has the privilege of having this culture within them, and this culture, and the
Yes.
variety of stuff, and get rid of all of these words that we use to label people. I know we're a
Mhm.
long way from it, but wouldn't it be neat to get to that point, Sabrina? To walk in somewhere and have a kid, another kid go, wow, who are you?
Well, you know what's interesting though is that like even though I completely agree with that, I definitely don't want to like have it where it's diminishing the cultures as well. You know, like I don't want it to be like, oh, everyone's one color kind of a thing, because different cultures have such beautiful different intricacies and stuff, you know, that it's like I don't want those to go unnoticed either. You know,
Correct.
like
We're
I love
saying the
it when
same thing, to
people,
actually appreciate those things.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, I love it when people ask me about my Chinese side and like what traditions we do. And I love being able to speak with my mother in Chinese in front of my friends and stuff like that. Be like, hey, don't forget I have this side too, because I love it, you know? Um, yeah,
And that's a
yeah.
work in progress for all of us.
I think that's for sure. I think it's about, at least specifically with mixed kids, I think it's about finding out who they are first and how into one side or the other they are before you make any judgments. I also, because it's really hard not to think about specifically the industry that we're all in, you know, it's like so easy to get fed up in that kind of stuff, because obviously we're all here for more inclusion in movies and stuff like that. But I think it also like before you go straight into hating on someone for their culture, I think it's very important to learn about that person first and explore who that person is and what they actually bring to the table, rather than, like you said, like immediate labels.
Has it made you a kinder and a more understanding person?
You know, I've never thought about that. I'm not sure. I mean, I think just in general, having two vastly different ethnicities has definitely contributed, in the sense where it's like they're very, very different in this, and me being able to experience both have definitely let me understand both sides a lot better. In the sense where it's like if I was just fully Chinese, assuming that if my father was Chinese and had the same upbringing as my mom, um, I would grow up with less understanding of people who don't celebrate their culture as much. But yeah, I think it, you know, and vice versa. You know, if I was just fully white, I don't think I would have the same understanding about cultural and ethnic people. Um, I think I would still very much appreciate it and love to learn about it, but I wouldn't have the same understanding. Um, I haven't put too much thought into that actually. That's interesting.
Very
Yeah.
nice. Very nice. At least from what I hear from all your friends and from knowing you, you are a lot, you're very kind, truly
Oh,
very
yeah.
kind. and you are very understanding and you analyze things. You don't take things at surface level. You
I
go
try
in
not to.
deeper. And I
Yeah.
really do believe that is because you are exposed to two completely different cultures
Hmm.
that allowed you to do that.
Yeah, maybe.
And now you're studying Chinese officially.
I am. I had a very long break from it because again, it went into the whole identity crisis where I was like, on one hand, like there were definitely moments in my life where I resented the culture just because I wasn't very happy with how I was being treated by the people from that side of me. And, so I just kind of like put it off for not put it off because I always wanted to know the language better than I did. Um, but I was always kind of just, put off a little bit. But recently I've had lots of, I know I shouldn't be living with regrets, but one of them is not having solidified that language when I was younger. Also because mostly because like scientifically it's a lot easier to learn languages as a child. And so now that I'm like officially enrolled in classes, I'm like, who let me speak like that? My grammar was awful. I don't know why anyone let me get away with that for the past 20 years of my life. But
That's
glad to
part of
know
growing
better
up. They're
now.
allowing you to grow up.
Yeah, now I know better. And it's still really hard trying to like reset my brain. And again, I thought I was speaking correctly my whole life. I was not. Um, yeah, but I'm really, really happy that I am. And it's the only class I'm enrolled in right now. Because I mean, at least personally, with where I am in my life, I'm in education for the sake of education, not for the sake of a degree. Um, so I'm just kind of learning things that I actually want to learn right
I
now.
think
So
that's great. That comes from you getting your freedom, like you said, at a young age to be able to take control of who
yeah,
you
it
are.
definitely was a struggle getting all the parents on board for that. But we're still working on it.
I can imagine. I can
Yeah.
imagine. Obviously, both cultures' background is education is tops. You got to get an
Right.
education, you got to get a degree.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we're
yeah.
all for it. But you choosing the things that move you forward because they apply to
Mhm.
you, it's a big deal. You talked
Yeah.
about the industry. Just for the listeners, you are a photographer.
Mhm.
You are a camera professional photographer, professional camera assistant on sets, and you're also
Yes.
obviously an actor. And you
Yes.
dabble or you indulge in fashion. As you
That's the
say
result of being Yasmin's best friend.
it. Tell me how you even chose those routes and began dabbling in all of that because you are young, which is beautiful to
Mhm.
see someone so young and yet professional and at the same time into many arts. How did you get into all of
Yeah.
that, Sabrina?
Man, I wish let me think. I started at a very young age. I was always a very artistic child growing up. Like I was always doing like the dance performances, like the talent shows, just everything I could, starting from a very young age. But I think it all started with acting because that is my
Mhm.
main passion and love in life is acting. And it all started from that actually, or like it solidified in this moment. There was this a moment in sixth grade. I remember it. It was sixth grade, and there was like a oh gosh, what do they call them? It's like an assembly, where you're like the entire school is required to come to this presentation or something in the auditorium. Um, and they showed us the first act of the school play of the seventh graders play, and it was like Robin Hood, the Next Generation, or it was something stupid and not at all impactful. But like I just like loved it so much because I remember going into it being like, oh, we have to sit through this whole thing, and then loving it and going watch the following two shows at paying for tickets to get the following two shows. And then next year I enrolled in the drama class because of it. And it was a very quick moment. I was like, oh my God, this is so fun. I want to do it. And I immediately did it. And it was my number one passion. But then I entered high school, and my theater program in high school was not a very good place to be in mentally. It was very nice for the first 2 years, and then my third year it kind of all plummeted downhill. And so I indulged in the cinematography class because that was amazing. And also just I wanted to learn more about I just wanted to do it all is what it was. Or at least learn more about it. I didn't think about I was going to take it seriously as a professional career at that time. But the teacher who taught that class, his first year was my freshman year. He's very young. I think he was like 24 when he started teaching. And so he's the one who brought the program into what it was. It was an amazing program. He got us all kinds of industry level equipment for us to get hands-on experience with. And he took me and a few other kids under his wing and mentored us and brought us onto his sets, because him and his girlfriend at the time had a production company, and they would, I mean, essentially use this as child labor, but it was very educational for me. I have nothing but mad respect for this man. So I don't want to sound like he was using like us for free child labor, which is what he was doing, but I have nothing but great feelings towards him. So we're still good friends to this day. Like I am staring at his wedding invitation right now. But he brought us in under his wing, and we got hands-on experience on set and stuff like that. And so I learned a lot through that. I was 15 and being like doing behind the scenes on sets, and it was really cool. And so I kind of fell into that side of things, which was a great unexpected surprise. And therefore learning about cinema camera, I then learned about photography, and I've always had kind of just like, I've just always loved taking photos. And so then I also got my first camera, and that led into my photography account, and also just a mix of that. And my parents are artists, or they used to be. So my dad would teach me like actual like art growing up and stuff like that. So I've always had like an affinity with like visual pieces and putting together things. And I feel like photography has like a combination of both like actual art and like movie art combined, because there's a lot less limits when it comes to photography. Yeah, that was a little, so that's how I got into photography and cinematography and acting, I guess. Yeah.
And you've been on a few sets as camera assistant.
Specifically, yes. Yeah,
and like
yeah.
hired professionally to go work on camera sets.
Yeah, that's where all of my professional work comes from. Straight out of high school, I was 17 when I graduated high school. Straight out of high school as a 17-year-old, I started working on sets as assistant camera, just because at that point I had just a handful of connections, but those connections were like, I can't take this job right now, or it's below my budget. Do you want it? And so that's how it started, with like super low, sometimes free jobs. And from there on, I just kind of built my connections and stuff like that. And so I've been very lucky that they've always called me back for their projects. And a few times, well, we've done some traveling gigs, which was really fun. And that's definitely where I work the most, especially professionally. Although I am kind of using all the camera work and stuff as a stepping stone to, I did a lot of directing when I was in that cinema program, and I directed a lot of things for his production company as well. And I took a break from it because of one experience, but very much still have a love and passion for directing as well. So I'm kind of hoping to use all the camera gigs I'm getting and making it known that that's something I'd be interested in if anyone has like a short film or something that they want done, or just kind of using it as a stepping stone to just get on set. Honestly, I just love being on sets, and meeting people and talking to new people and creatives and stuff.
I think that's amazing. All the things that you step into at your age and being able to come in as a professional, honestly, because so many kids struggle to find themselves, and you're doing it by showing up and doing the work and learning from it. Because from the outsider, I'm not in the industry, but you hear so much about how tough it is to be in the industry. And I hate to label, but as a female, it is tougher to be in the industry. Is that your experience, or what's it like? And being young at the same time?
Well, I was just gonna say it's definitely a combination of things. because I didn't go to like a traditional film school, I think everyone everyone in the film industry, if they a lot of them did go to film school and they all say that they regret it, but they still have like in the back of their mind kind of like, oh, if you didn't go to film school, how did you learn, and are you actually as qualified as you seem, kind of a thing. um and again, being female is definitely a big part of it, specifically on camera teams are usually consisting of men, and I pretty much have only worked with men in the industry who are much older. There's this one time I was on a set where the DP was also like the main cameraman, the A cameraman. And he was like, oh yeah, like I'm so used to being the youngest on all the sets and like getting made fun of and teased for that, stuff like that. He was like, I'm finally glad that like someone's younger than me. And I like, that's the first time someone was like happy that I was young on a set. And I was like, oh my gosh, really? How old are you? And he was like, I'm 29. And I was like, he's like, how old are you? I was like, at the time I was 19. I was like, I'm a teenager. um so but yeah, so like but I think specifically again, like the camera stuff is so male dominated, and I think I don't know what it is. I mean, there's a lot of heavy lifting, but not as much as like gaffers or like lighting and tech and stuff. I don't know where it comes from. Maybe because it's like a really techie side of the industry as well. People tend to associate like men with tech, kind of like how like a female engineer is kind of also more, that kind of thing. But I just show up and they just usually don't assume much. It's different because even if I'm first ACing and I have a young male second AC, people will still go to him first. And I don't think they even realize why. Because the thing is, even though it's not like outright sexism and stuff like that, I think they subconsciously, I don't think they even realize. It's just things that I notice because I am kind of on the like not outside, but I mean like, because I'm experiencing it. But I find, this is what I usually say, I find that I have to earn respect first, and then I feel comfortable like revealing my age and like my background and stuff. Whereas I find that my second ACs just show up and have the respect. Yeah. I've definitely phrased that better before. I'm trying to figure out how I did. Yeah, we've had a whole conversation about this. I'm trying to remember.
Do you still feel that way when you show up on a set and you're professionally hired and paid? Do you still feel that way as you walk into a set, or have you adjusted your way of thinking to go, I belong here just like anyone else?
So that's my thing, is that I personally know myself that I do belong there. I trust myself, and even if I am maybe not, I definitely can acknowledge that there's definitely a lot of things about cameras that I can still learn because there's so much to it. It's kind of shocking. But I know what I need to know to do my job, and I'm very confident in how I can do my job, and I know that I can do it well. But I still go into it knowing that I'm going to have to work a little extra harder to prove myself. Because when I show up, they're like, oh, okay, we might have to work a little harder, instead of, oh, good, qualified help just showed up. So again, even though like I know I'm qualified, it's I still find myself wanting to work harder. I mean, I always put like 100% into everything I do anyways, but it's just having the feeling of needing to prove myself as well is a thing.
And you touch on something so important with what you said, that to outsiders, to some people, they don't understand all the pieces that go into doing all these jobs, that unless you walk in someone's shoes and actually be in it, there's no job out there that's simple. But you yeah, I mean, talk about that a little bit. I guess some people go, oh, camera, okay.
Oh yeah, insane. I was in so much shock because like I've always watched so many behind the scenes growing up, but like before I even knew that this is like the industry I wanted to go into, I would always I remember it was the You Belong With Me from by the Taylor Swift music video. I watched that behind the scenes so often. And that was before I was even like aware that I wanted to be in the industry. But like so I've always enjoyed it, but like I would always like see the camera and just assume like that's the camera, not realizing that that is actually just a giant Lego set that the cameramen have to and like the ACs have to put together every morning. It's just like an intricate system of wires and different technology and just piling things on top of it. There's so much more math involved than I thought there would be. Like counting stops of light and then actual like camera settings. There's so much involved in that. Like I was really shocked going into it. I don't know how I learned what I know. I think I again just on set experience and on sets where it's okay to make mistakes and it's like for the purpose of learning, I think was very beneficial for me. But like something that I didn't realize either, and going into it, I'm like, oh yeah, I know, like oh, you're a cameraman, like that must be so like fulfilling artistically and stuff like that. But I realize now that I'm working in the camera team, it's just a bunch of tech geeks. It's just a bunch of like camera nerds, which is hilarious. But it is also I find myself being able to indulge less in the artistic side of things, which is the side that I fell in love with. Yeah, but I mean that's me just talking about the camera team. Like watching sound is so underrated. Lighting is also extremely underrated. As a photographer, I'm trying to learn more about lighting techniques and stuff. Oh,
You're
okay.
fine.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to learn more about lighting techniques and stuff, but it's kind of crazy how much technical stuff goes into this art stuff.
Is that where you get to be a lot more artistic in your photography?
Yeah, definitely.
I
Also
actually
because the photography
went into your Instagram and started looks like, my goodness, she's great.
Oh my God, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm always so back and forth about my own work. I mean, as any artist is, it's always like, oh, I hate it. No, I love it. No, I hate it, kind of thing. Or like, I'll be taking the photos and be like, I love it. And then I'm editing them. I'm like, I don't know what to do with them. Like, I find that I take so long to post any of my photography because I go back and forth so often. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put it out there. It seems like most people like it. But even then it doesn't really matter, which is why like I don't really care about my followers on my photography account as much, but it's mostly just because I want to get my art out there and stuff. But specifically with the photography, like for me that feels like that's mine kind of thing, and I don't necessarily have to share it unless I want to, in the sense of with film crews there's like so many jobs and everyone has a just as equally important job. Like even the PAs, oh my gosh, they do a lot. Like everyone has such a super important job and it's definitely a team effort. But with photography, I mean, still a team effort in the sense where you're working with the models and I have a makeup artist that I love working with frequently and we collaborate a lot. It's still a team effort, but ultimately I have like the full control over where I want it to go and the actual everything, like the whole process. So the photography feels like I created that kind of thing. And I feel like I haven't had as many opportunities to do that recently. Being on camera team, I'm working on someone else's project, or I haven't had as many opportunities as an actress, but even then it's like, oh, I want to make sure that I fulfill the director's vision while making it my own, of course, and making it something that means something to me, but it's still ultimately you're still taking direction.
I'm glad you transitioned into that because I was going to ask you about the short film you just completed because you were behind the camera, in front of the camera instead of behind the camera, because that's completely different experience than a photography where you're directing the person and the shots that you take. What was that experience like for you?
I have nothing but amazing things to say about that whole experience. Everyone who asks me about it, I always say from waking to going to sleep, that whole week that we filmed was nothing but amazing. Like there was not a single bad moment in there for me. Um, it it just really reminded me why I love acting so much. Because again, I've been super fortunate and successful in all my behind the scenes stuff and my photography and my cinematography, but I haven't had much success with the acting or anything. And so I haven't had as many opportunities to do so. And so this film that Kennedy wrote and directed it, and asked me to lead in it, which is really funny because I think it was like the week that she flew us out to Utah to film it. The week of, she called Yasmin and she was like, I've never seen Sabrina act before. Is she even any good? And Yasmin was like, trust me, she's good. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so honored that she had that much faith in me with her actual baby, because that's what the film was to her. It's her child. You know, I'm so honored that she had that much trust in me to be able to do it without have ever watched me act before. um, but it really rekindled my passion and joy for acting. I don't know. I don't know how to express it. I just love it. And it was so
Actually,
much fun.
I would love for you to express it. What is acting for you? What does it mean to you? And how does it come out in your beingness, being an actor?
Yeah. Well, so for me, it really started and it still is. Okay, well, so I mentioned how I had a slightly strict upbringing, and I felt I didn't have as much means to be anybody but this like idea of perfection that was like set for me. And I didn't feel that I had any of the freedom to do so either. And so acting was a way that I not only could be someone else, but I could do all those things through other people's shoes that I can't do in my normal life. You know, like even just like I didn't even have like any really like close friends at that point, you know, and I'm like, even just like faking this like really close friendship with someone meant something to me, you know, like acting was definitely a way that I could have experiences that I hadn't had. Again, I started pretty young, so I didn't have many experiences to begin with, but um it's definitely a way for me to experience things that I haven't gotten to experience for myself or that I've always wanted to, or different worlds. Like I've always been super into different worlds, and I'm like in my daily life I could never do certain things, you know, like or like magic, you know, that doesn't fully exist in this world, you know, like but like it'd be super cool to be able to shoot fire out of my hands, you know, like it's things like that. I I feel like where me and Yasmin just differ with our acting, like our passion for acting, where I'm like, I personally don't feel like, as much as I want to be able to inspire people with my performance and the stories I tell, ultimately I am in it for myself in the sense where I'm like, I just really want to have fun. And I just want to be able to enjoy what I'm doing. And if people are able to take away something from that, that's fantastic. That makes me 10 times happier. But like, I remember like some of the people that I really want to work with is like Aquafina and The Rock. I don't know where this obsession with The Rock is, but like it's because they do movies that I think it would be so fun to do. You know, like cheesy action movies. That just sounds like fun to me. You know, I just again like I'm in it for the adventure and the fun of it.
I think that's crucial that you are
Yeah.
in it for that, because that's what comes across when people see someone acting or doing anything, any kind of work in life, and it comes
Mhm.
from within them. It shows
Mhm.
up differently than when you do it because you're aiming to please someone or you're aiming to get someone's attention. It's completely different. So when you show up on a set and you're
Yeah.
enjoying it, that comes through, and it does teach someone to actually be present and enjoy life, whether you're aiming to do
Mhm.
that or not.
It was, it's funny how you say that, because like even in like there's like a scene where in Kennedy's Short where I'm like sobbing on my bed, like heartbroken over like my first like crush or whatever. And I was like doing the scene, and Kennedy wanted to make sure that we got it like really quickly because it's like, emotionally taxing sometimes. And I'm like sobbing in bed. She's like, "We got it. We couldn't see the tears that much, but it's okay. We'll move on." And I was like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "I'm having a lot of fun. Like, I can keep going. I can do 5 more takes. Don't worry about me." Like, I'm fully sobbing, like my eyes out and like crying, but I'm having so much fun. Like, it's even like the emotional, sad stuff that I'm like, this is so much fun. I can do more. I can do more. Let me do more. You know?
Where do you see from this? Because you talk about your ultimate goal is to actually direct. Where do
I mean,
you
aside
see
from the
these?
acting, yes.
Uh-huh. So
Yeah.
you would like to actually continue to act and direct.
Yes. I mean, the main ultimate passionate goal is the acting. But I do really enjoy the directing as well. That's probably like my secondary.
What is it
Um,
about directing that speaks to you there?
Sometimes I see people do things and I'm like, that was dumb. I was like, this is how you should have done it. I mean, no, I mean, that's definitely part of it, but I'm just like, oh, it would have been so great if you did this though. I just like, I love being able to have creative control. Because again, as an actress, you're able to bring so much to the table. But most of the time, ultimately, what it is, it's the director telling you what they want portrayed. And of course,
Mhm.
it's like a teamwork kind of situation where you're like, oh, but what if, but ultimately they do have final say. And also because now that I have dabbled as much as I have, not dabbled, but like have been on the technical side and creative side so much that I'm now like, I watch movies and I'm like, ooh, like the lighting here is insane. I'm like, I wonder how they did that. And I'm like, oh, the sound design, wow, that's incredible, and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'd love to be able to do that for myself as well. Um, because I get really excited about those things. And so I'd love to use this excitement behind it. That's why I always have like, everyone's like, why don't you make your own stuff? And I'm like, I have for a long time, but now my issue is like, I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to star in it or direct it, because I'm like, I'd want to star in it, but I'd want it done in such a specific way where, I'm like, it has to be not my project if I act in it.
So it's a good way for you to express yourself, honestly, directing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
it sounds, that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying, is like it's a way to express your perspective on things more than anything
Yeah.
else.
And again, I just get so excited about all aspects of film that I'm just like, why do I have to do just one thing? Yeah.
Sabrina, if we could talk to someone that is a couple of years younger than you,
Mm.
that is possibly struggling in who they are and what they would like, and some of the dark times that some teenagers go through, what would you say to them now that you're in your 20s, early 20s?
Mhm. Hmm. Good question. I think something that I'm finding with even friends that I still have from high school and middle school and so on is that it's really hard for some people to move on from the like school days and move on and transition into being an adult. Um, and I was just lucky enough that I was so ready and excited for it, but not everyone is as prepared, because I remember my junior and senior year of high school, all of my closest friends were really struggling with like college applications and stuff because they didn't know what they wanted to do with their lives. And I realized then, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so fortunate that I was able to know what I wanted to do at such a young age and to be able to work at it as soon as I made that realization. But like in watching other people struggle with it, but also seeing where they are now, like there is an answer for almost everything. I feel like I think time is so important. um And I definitely, even though I was able to know what I wanted to do so young, I needed to allow myself time before I could start doing some things. And I think it's just so easy to get caught up in the moment of everything. And I'm like, ultimately, it doesn't really matter what's happening in the moment. I think it just matters what you take away from it, and that you do take something away from it. Because there have definitely been moments in my life where I'm just like at such a low. But I've always, for me personally, I know it's not the same with everyone, but I've always known that there is a better side of things. And I just really look forward to that. I mean, again, for me, it's my passion for the arts. I'm like, you know, this isn't it, because I still have all of this that I need to do and that I want to do. And I just kind of bring myself up by looking forward to things. But also, it's very much valid and okay to feel the negative feelings as well, because yin and yang, you can't have the good without the bad. And I think I definitely lived in those darker moments and for a lot longer than was probably healthy at the time. But without those, I wouldn't have the highs that I have. And I've had some really great highs in my life. So
What keeps you grounded right now? Because you do have a lot of projects that you work on, a lot of different things, schedules. I look at you and the wonderful young individuals that you guys are, between Yasmin, Kennedy, and all of the ones that we associate with. Your schedules are packed by choice. By
yeah.
choice. How do you stay grounded through it?
I want to say my friends. I mean, I've always considered my friends my family, being an only child without besides my immediate family, like besides my parents here, I didn't really grow up with any family, like no pets or anything like that. It was just me. So I very much hold a lot of value to my friendships that I have. And I'm also just really fortunate that I found some really good friends that I truly care about and truly care about me as well. And I find that my friends are kind of like my escape as well. Like that's definitely how I got through those darker moments, because I had that escape. I don't know. I think just definitely surrounding yourselves with the right people is very important to me. There are definitely people that mean a lot to me, but I've had to take like a step away from, just because I wasn't mentally able to deal with certain people at certain moments of my lives, but then have just fallen right back into place at the right time. I don't know. Again, my friends bring me so much joy. And so much reassurance. Yeah, and I think just, at least with me personally, I keep myself busy with things that I enjoy doing. So I don't think, so I actually really enjoy the busyness of it all. It's like the past week that I've had where I've had nothing to do but sit in bed and watch TV. Then I'm like, okay, I'm starting to go a little crazy. I quite enjoy my busyness. I've always, but also I've always been such a busy person. Like literally in elementary school, I had like, classes, but then I also had like my Taekwondo 3 times a week. I had my Chinese school on Saturdays, and then I had talent shows. And then I was doing everything from a very early age. I never had a moment to rest. So I quite enjoy the busyness. So I don't think, I don't know. I've never really felt like I needed something to keep me grounded while I'm busy. I mean, yes, for sure. But just like, again, like I keep myself busy with things that I enjoy. So
I
alone
try
time is really nice.
I translate those things that you pay attention to the things that matter to you and you invest your time and energy into them,
Yeah.
including
Yeah,
your friends.
I think that's what it is. It's definitely investing my time in things that matter more to me.
And I have to give you kudos to you and all of the wonderful and amazing ones, as I call you, because you guys are so articulate and you are so
Oh,
aware of the things that are going on within you and around you so that you adjust. And I think that's amazing for you to be so in tune
I
to
don't know where
your
it came from.
to your career, to your who you are, to what matters within your friends. That takes a lot of work. That there are adults that still struggle with this, but
Yeah.
you pay attention. And I think that's what makes you a great photographer, honestly, because you
Oh,
pay
thank you.
attention. That's what makes you great in your work as a camera assistant. That's what makes you great as an actor because you show up. You pay
Oh,
attention.
yeah. I mean, I definitely think I'm sure not all of it, but definitely a good part of it, at least for me, comes from being an actress because, you're always thinking like, oh, what is my character thinking at this moment? Like, where do those thoughts come from? What stemmed those thoughts to begin with, And so like through like lots of character analysis, because like even like as a person, I don't think about where my thoughts come from. I just have them. But through having to think that way, I think I'm a bit more aware, or I put a bit more thought. It's easier for me to, I don't know. Actually, you know what? There it is. There
That's
goes
great.
all the articulation I had.
That's great. That's great. I so appreciate you. I know we could talk for hours.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
Sabrina, what is the best way for the listeners and the viewers to actually keep up with you, to follow you, to get in contact with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, well, I'm most active on Instagram. I have my main Instagram, my personal Instagram, Sabrina period Zukowski. And that's kind of like my main account where I just kind of share everything in my life. It's a public account, so feel free to DM me there. I love talking to people. But I also have my photography account, which is Dusty period lenses. Um, Also a public account, also very much open to messages on there and stuff. Um, yeah, and I just like sharing things about my work and my life on there. So
Is there
yeah.
anything that you'd like to share that I may not have asked you so we don't get off and go, oh, I wish Rima had asked me this?
I'm sure there is because I had lots of like when you first brought this up to me, I was like, oh my God, I can talk about this and that and that and that. And I don't even remember what I was thinking. So I'm hoping that I did. Let me see. I don't know. I guess I kind of actually wanted to hear more about your perspective on you coming to America and experiencing this new culture for you and how you have learned and adapted and changed.
It was a
Because that's something
process.
that we
Just
talked about
it was a big
like how
process.
I had the other
Mhm.
side of it. And I'm curious about your side.
For me, it took a number of years actually to begin to adjust
Mhm.
because when we moved completely culture change,
How old were
culture
you? Sorry.
12,
Oh,
12.
wow. Yeah.
So not only the language, but every nuance about being in the States from being in Lebanon was completely different for me.
I'm
And I
sure.
do come from a background of also being um, sheltered or taken care of.
Mm,
We didn't come from a gigantic city, we were from a little town. So all of it made a difference to move to the States and then begin to understand. And it took honestly years, Sabrina, for me to begin to understand that what was happening is I was beginning to be a lot more open to
mhm.
understanding that there are a variety of individuals, there are a variety of cultures in the world. And that process, like I said, took a period of time because at first you're only concentrating on yourself and the things that you're going through,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
made fun of because kids simply didn't understand. They weren't making fun of you because they're making fun of you. They're making fun of you because they don't understand.
That's exactly it. It's like a lack of understanding.
Yes. So to me, when I talk about this stuff and why I am passionate about speaking to a variety of individuals about it, so that we can open up the lines for people to see that there is a variety of ways to live. And that's what makes this world so wonderful. So all the steps that it took me to begin to go, oh, I don't have to stay attached to a certain way of being or a certain set of
Mm,
doing, but actually be more open to adopting styles within the United States, even opening up to speaking to a variety of individuals where I have come so far into now I look at an individual as an individual and go, how exciting. How exciting to see who they
yeah.
are. That wasn't me way back then, obviously, because, and I think a part of it was the protection side. We
Mhm.
came again from a country that we're in a little town and everyone's stuck together. You come to the United States and everything is open and it's so different. And I'm sure from my parents' perspective, with four young girls and one boy, they
Mhm.
needed to protect us because everything was new. So that played into it, but it took years of going through things and learning to adjust and begin to understand. Now I look at all the experiences from back then. I go, I'm so grateful I got to have that experience because that's what makes me who I am today, to be able to speak with someone, even in conversations where they're a little bit heated or
Mhm.
possibly even hateful, you could say. I
Mhm.
could step back and go, where's this person coming from? Because honestly, I could see where I was that way.
Yeah.
I was that way. And I go, whoa. And I wouldn't have altered had I not had the ability to be in a culture and in a variety of ways in the States and see all the things that can happen. So that's partially my experience. Otherwise, we could talk for hours on that.
Oh yeah, no, no, absolutely. I was gonna, well, it's interesting because I very much try and be as understanding and kind of a person as I can be to anybody in my daily life, like even if it's just whoever's like checking me out at the cashier kind of thing. But mostly because it's so important to remember that these aren't just characters passing in your life. Like these are actually people who fully live a whole life. Just like in the sense like how you're talking about how like even if you are having a conversation with someone who is a bit more angered about something, it's and having to take a step back to realize, okay, where are they coming from? Like this is coming from somewhere, and understanding that rather than kind of fighting back with fire, than being like, oh, I don't agree with them. I don't, so I don't like them kind of thing,
It's definitely not
um,
easy to do that.
it's not easy.
It's
There's definitely
not
a lot of
easy.
moments where I'm like,
Yeah.
what are these people thinking? But I try and at least see there's, even though I don't agree with everyone's side, I definitely try and be like, okay, well, this is like how they're brought up, or, and I could, and as frustrating as it is, I have to keep that in mind. I find, but even just like, again, using someone at your who's checking you out at the register as an example, like even if they're not as nice as they could be, like maybe they're usually really nice and just are having an off day. Maybe they just need some coffee. Like it's just things like that.
I said it to someone. I don't put up as many boundaries, although
Mhm.
I do have boundaries, but
Oh,
I
fair.
allow boundaries to break down in those cases to go,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter if they're judging me or I'm judging them. It's
Mhm.
really me being aware that I'm even judging them, to break down those barriers that we
Mm.
think are boundaries. And I think a part of it is because I grew up in Lebanon, we went through the period of war. I learned to be silenced because the war taught
Mhm.
me that if you express your views, if you say certain things, someone can make that decision to eliminate you, that you don't matter anymore.
Wow.
And a part of that was in my psychology of who I am. And it took me years to understand that. So as I began to elaborate and grow and become who I am, now I understand that it's what's needed the most in the world is for us to
Mhm.
begin to see each other as individuals
Yeah.
and understand our backgrounds and actually appreciate the various culture differences that makes
Mhm.
us who we are. So I go full circle on that. It's like really paying attention, really being mindful to not judge and break down boundaries, not put up more boundaries, and allow people to become who
Absolutely.
they are. So that's
Yeah.
kind of all of it wrapped into some of who I am.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Sabrina, I thank you so much. I know
I
that
thank
this has been a
you.
tough
This
week
is so
for
much
you.
fun. I love being able to talk about this stuff.
Me too. Me too. I
It's,
could talk for hours.
it feels like, it feels like when, well, okay, I don't know, but like this is what I'm thinking of. Like when I have like a sleepover with a good friend of mine, and you're just like having fun one moment, and then like next thing you know, it's 1 a.m. and you're having like incredibly deep conversation. And I'm like, we should make a podcast out of this. Or like this needs to be said. And you can't like, and the next day if you tried to like tell someone else about the conversation, you're like, I cannot for the life of me tell you what we talked about. Or like I can't remember what was said. I just remember it was amazing and impactful kind of a, like thing. Like it feels kind of like that, but this time it's recorded, which is nice and can be shared.
Yes, I think
That's what it feels like.
that's the beauty of social media, true social media, is to be able to express those
Mhm.
kind of things, that the conversations that go on, that a lot of people think but may not be able to express them properly, or they think they're the only one that are thinking those thoughts.
Yeah, and it's really enlightening when you're on the other end, like receiving this information, watching it, and being like, oh, I've never thought about it that way, and stuff like that. So,
Those are the beautiful moments, to be able to say that. It's like,
yeah,
oh, I didn't see it that way. And I've
yeah.
had lots of those conversations with people that open up your eyes and go, oh, okay, there's more than
Well,
one
even in
perspective.
having, yeah, exactly. Well, like even in having these conversations, like even like the one today, I don't necessarily always have all of these thoughts fully formed coming into it. I'm having the conversation and I'm like, well, I guess this is what I actually think about it. Or like, you had a question, about how being mixed might have contributed to me being kind. Thank you. And I'm like, I've never thought about that. So like a lot of things that I have said and will say, are things that I'm just realizing in the moment. And that's the nice thing about being able to sit down and have like these conversations, is because I didn't realize I thought this way about certain things.
That's why we need people's voices more, not
Hmm.
less. And
Yeah.
for people to be open to hearing each other
Hmm.
really well.
Yeah. 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 Definitely the openness.
I appreciate you so much.
I
Thank you for
appreciate
being
you.
here.
Thank you for having me.
And listeners, viewers, thank you for being here. As you guys all know and hear me say it every podcast, our attitude determines our altitude. Look at these wonderful young individuals that are putting one foot in front of the other and learning and growing through everything. So pay attention to your attitude so that we can all have a kinder, more understanding world. And see you on the next episode. Sabrina, thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
my dear.